Welcome to this fireside chat for the FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit. I'm Thomas Wasson, trucking expert here at FreightWaves. And for this fireside chat, I'm going to be talking about generative AI and its impact on the supply chain. This technology has been around for a few years, but recently has gained huge amounts of attention. You may know it as the Chat GPT and other providers. And so, especially for applications, going to be bringing on the folks at Geotab. I'm going to be talking with Mike Branch, Vice President of Data and Analytics at Geotab. We're going to go over what they've been working on in that domain and some of the cool features and how this is impacting the supply chain. Mike, pleasure to have you on. Super excited to be learning about this. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you all decide to get into AI?
Yeah, pleasure to meet you, Thomas. So I've been with the Geotab for about 8 years, and I head up everything data and AI related here at Geotab. So I've got a team of about 130 data scientists, engineers, folks working on AI and product, all looking at bringing the world of data and AI to life for our customers. And remarkably, we've been doing AI for a few years now. It didn't just happen as of last year, as the world seems to think, with the huge hype on generative AI. So we've been working with more traditional AI machine learning type applications for years now. Everything from, predictive maintenance. So looking at, when a battery is going to fail within a vehicle to safety related applications. And I think the common trend that we've seen certainly amongst our customers over the years, the question, we're consistently asked is, how do I derive better insight from my data? That's been a common trend. And so nobody really asked us, hey, Geotab, take generative AI and mash it into your platform and make it work for me. But what people do ask is, how can I get better insights more quickly? And we hypothesize that generative AI is a great way to do that. All right. It's a great way to allow you to have a conversation with your fleet. And so we started that journey on generative AI this year, but without all of the work that we've done, certainly historically in the past, on getting great data insights, on making this kind of data available. Generative AI you could have all the generative AI you want, and it wouldn't be able to extract the insights because we prepared all that data very, very well. So started that this year, and it really started off with our project G Beta. And so what we did with that is we simply wanted to allow our fleet customers, again, to get that insight quickly by simply asking a question. So you could ask a question like, how much idling did my fleet do last month? Which drivers are experiencing, issues when it comes to speeding in specific jurisdictions, right? So you can make it pretty open-ended, and the benefit of generative AI is able to distill that, right? Understand what the user is asking, and then deliver a result to the customer, all while keeping their data very private, very secure, all within the Geotab ecosystem. We're leveraging the best of generative AI, the best of these large language models to be able to deliver this insight. And instead of, waiting, for a significant amount of time or waiting to get the resources you need from a data scientist or analyst to be able to take all this data and make it beneficial, you get that response in seconds. So for us, it's really a tool to have like a bit of a data science or analyst in your pocket, right? To give you the best of, what the Geotab data science have been able to figure out from data and deliver it to you very, very quickly through a conversational chat interface. Yeah.
That's what I remember back in the day. I felt at large organizations, if you're in the supply chain, you had to find the person, the data science, and before that, the person who did the Excel or the SharePoint, and you had to ask them. And it was like, and it took a while. You put in a ticket. One thing I think is really cool with this AI is that being able to ask it and doing syntax. Like, I don't know how to program. So being able to say, can you tell me, create me a list or a table with my poorest performing vehicles and rank them. Is that kind of the solution and the future we're looking at is non-native tech people will be able to ask these questions and then the AI and the technology will actually be able to format it for them when before you had to go through all these layers.
100%. And I think the way I always put it is that it puts the power in the hands of those who have the capability uh, to make change, right? Whether you're the chief sustainability officer, as high as that, or if you're the fleet manager or somebody who doesn't understand how to write a query to extract the data. You shouldn't need to, but you have a question of the data and you simply want that answered, and this democratizes it quite a bit, right? So now all of a sudden you're putting the power in the hands of these change makers, right? The people, to your point, you don't have to go and ask multiple data analysts to pull that data for you, or hey, I need to pull data from this Excel sheet over here, pull it into this Power BI platform, and do all these things. No, like you can ask that question and have a reply to you. I think what we see certainly in the market right now, there's a lot of and this is obviously the case for ChatGPT as well too. A lot of trust issues though, right? Hallucinations and these kinds of things that happen. So I think part of the role that we have to do as technologists is ensure that we're being as transparent as possible in how it's come to these conclusions as well. And that's an important part of the work that we're doing right now.
I think that's fascinating because a lot of these models, I think what Facebook had like Llama or Lambda and a few others, a lot of them are based on weight. You have to try and teach it what to prioritize. But in the transportation and domestic supply chain, they typically have large repositories of proprietary data. And I guess one of the biggest challenges is you may be in an advantage because I don't have to wait for this model. I need to answer very technical questions with telematics and maintenance and other data points. Is that kind of an advantage? Does that shift the role of these analysts towards, let me clean and filter this and make it digestible enough that we can make these things, compared to like an editorial or media person who's like, oh, well, I'm only getting like the last 2 years stale data from a collection of newspapers. How am I supposed to write my copy? I feel like the supply chain has an advantage with their own data that's always accurate and fresh.
Absolutely. And the nicety is that if I always call it AI or analytic ready data, right? If you've got AI ready data, you can put generative AI capabilities on top of that to allow it to extract that insight quickly. So you have that fresh data, right? We've certainly done a lot of work in making sure we have up-to-date data, analytic and AI ready, so that the way that we leverage the LLM, or from a generative AI perspective, is that we'll ask it to write something technical, write me a query, right? That given this knowledge and this understanding, I'm going to give effectively the LLM a knowledge and understanding of how we set up the architecture, the data at Geotab, right, to make it AI and analytic ready. And I'm going to ask it, write me a query to get me, the folks who could maybe transition to electric vehicles tomorrow, right, based on their driving history, right, and their driving pattern. Or find me all issues where batteries are going to fail in a vehicle in the next month. And because we've got that analytic and AI ready model sitting behind the scenes, right, the metadata is there, it's well orchestrated. What I'm getting back from the LLM is simply a query to go and run and execute against that data that has already been governed, is safe, and doesn't exit the Geotab ecosystem for our customers as well. So to your point, it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You're able to leverage the intuition of these large language models with the power of this AI-ready data set in telematics that can really help drive the supply chain industry.
And looking at for customers, is this something that is it still being tested in-house, or have y'all done beta tests with early customers? What kind of feedback are you starting to get? Because being able to just simply ask, like if I want to buy an electric truck and I'm a fleet of thousands of trucks, what are my vehicles that were within this much mileage band that have traditionally done short haul, and what are their locations? I feel like that would typically take a week of time to ask somebody, and you just get it within seconds if everything's formatted right.
And some of the nicety behind that is that, again, it goes into the years of work that we've put up into this point. We've got an electric vehicle suitability assessment already as part of the Geotab platform. So it leverages the insight from that already and knows how to look at specific data sets, right? It's looking at range, looking at the vehicle location and movement patterns. To answer your question, we've released Project G, which is our beta product of this conversational agent. We released that back in July. We've onboarded about 50 customers onto it so far, of many different shapes and sizes. And the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And we are very clear at the onset to say, you know what, this is its corpus of understanding at this point in time. But inevitably, people ask questions that go outside of that corpus of understanding. And so what we're doing is we're recording every single question that gets asked. We, tell our users that we're doing this so that we can better understand the kinds of insights they're trying to glean from the platform. And so that's been really beneficial, help shape the product and what data sets we want to make available to it. We were very narrow at first, and we're gradually expanding that corpus of understanding. And that was one of the key learnings, right? You can't keep it too narrow. We kept it very narrow to begin with, but people want to understand about safety. They want to understand about maintenance. They want to understand about utilization. It's kind of the whole mix, right? And so, and people want to know that the data is factual, that it's accurate. The first thing that people do whenever they ask a question is they try to run a similar report to get the same answer as well too, to fact check, which you would expect them to do. So I always say, this year has been the year of hype for generative AI. I think next year will be the year of trust for generative AI, right? So building that trust amongst our ecosystem is the best thing that we could do. Are we going to get it right all the time? Probably not. Are we going to show our work all the time? Absolutely. Are we going to tell you what assumptions are made? Absolutely. And we think that this will help move the industry forward.
And I'm thinking as well, when you do ask, it does feel like people think the AI as in it's going to take everything over, but it does give me this, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this. We're changing fundamentally the inputs, allowing a verbal input to then be transcribed into an actual code base. And then I can verbally say, please show me your work. Because if I'm a CEO, I'm going to say, okay, well, I just got this report from the AI. I'm going to copy and paste the string it gave me. I'm going to send it to somebody else to double check it. Is that also, when we're talking about trust and establishing it, that's a feature built into this new paradigm of inputs?
It is, and it has to be. And it's tricky, right? Because you want to play back what it's doing, but that's difficult to do at a level that everybody will understand. But at least if you do provide that, there may be somebody within the organization who can understand it. So with the beta, what we had done as a first step, is you ask it a question, and then not only does it provide the response, but there's a little kind of code snippet. So you can click on that and you can see what query it executed. So if it did like an average instead of a median, or it group things a bit differently, you can see what it's doing behind the scenes. So it's important for us to be able to show that work. And then we have, thumbs up, thumbs down to see if we're getting things right. As we move forward, we're taking more agent-based approach on things where we will spell out, exactly what assumptions it's being, that are being made. Cause I think that's really important. You want to collapse it and hide it, because it's that balance between a user experience and being too verbose, but you also want to make sure that people can get to that detail if they want to, right? And so that's a big part of what we're doing as we start to bring this more fully within the ecosystem and start to look at bringing it out of beta.
And wrapping things up, looking ahead, as you're wrapping up in beta, what are some of the biggest wins, low-hanging fruit for folks who are looking at what the AI can do right now? Are there any specific things that, passed with flying colors that folks need to keep on their radar as we move into 24?
There were some cool things. Like we had some larger fleets that wanted to know the impact of a pilot that they'd done, right? They did a pilot to reduce idling in a few months in a specific jurisdiction. So they simply asked it, what were the results of the pilot that we conducted to reduce idling from January to March? And within like 20 seconds, it gave them like the full impact of that, right? In terms of the reduction. Another one that, I like to talk about is looking at productivity, right? So asking it, what are the most productive vehicles in my fleet? And it just makes an assumption that productivity is related to the most miles driven, and it, shows you the most miles driven, but that could be right, could be wrong, depending on what you're looking at. But you can rephrase and say, well, let's assume productivity is related to the most stops in the least amount of time. And then it just computes a productivity score for you. So it's nice that you can start having these conversations. It's nice. I would sooner that it makes an assumption and lists its assumption as opposed to not doing anything. That's kind of the guidance that we give the team is, let's make an assumption for what we think based on best practices this thing might be looking, the answer that the user might be looking for. but list the assumptions. Always list the assumptions.
I definitely like it, especially when you're the different departments, different siloed. You're using this product. You need to know what the assumptions are because you may never know. You may know not, the general acceptable standards. We're running out of time. I feel like we can go for a whole hour for this. We're gonna definitely have to keep this going. But for folks who want to learn more about this, especially a Geotab, get in touch or find out more. What's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, you can look up our Project G on the geotab.com website. And you'll be able to learn a little bit more about it there. And you can certainly contact us for any information about it. Happy to help here.
Mike, really appreciate your time. Mine's getting blown right now, and really, this is some great stuff to watch as we move to the new year in the supply chain. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Thomas. Cheers.
That's a wrap for this fireside chat. But don't worry if you're just joining us. There's a lot more great content coming right up.